human being here with me today. His name is George Wiseman, and he has some solutions to the problem. So, George, tell us what are the current issues of the day?
Hello, I'm George Wiseman, and I usually say something on the order of the world is currently in turmoil. As everybody knows, there's all kinds of things going on. The fuel prices are rising because of oil. We have health issues galore. We have food shortages on the horizon. People are getting worried about grocery store shelves being empty, all that sort of stuff. So what if, and I have a little list here, there was a technology that neutralized radioactive waste right at the reactor, so you don't have to worry about all the concentrated nuclear waste being stored all over the world and leaking out, can literally make precious stones and metals from rocks. So it increases the production of metal from ores and things like that. But you can literally make sapphires and rubies and emeralds and things like that directly with this technology. It can reduce carbon fuel consumption by 25% plus, in some circumstances 100%. So people double their fuel mileage. And this includes everything from a motorcycle to ocean-going ship. So this technology can do that. What if you can make your own torch fuel? So instead of acetylene or buying or bottled gas, you can actually make your own torch fuel. Helps plants grow up to 10 times faster. So if you're making your own food and growing your own food in a greenhouse and stuff, this technology, relatively inexpensive and easy to do, makes the plants grow 10 times faster, helps your body heal from virtually every ailment known to man, and makes you pretty much virus proof. So if any viruses come in, your immune systems just kick them out, and that's the end of it. I haven't been sick since 2005, since I started using this technology, and I used to get 3 or 4 colds or flus a winter. That alone convinced me. Not also including the other 15 or so advantages that it's given me. Like I no longer wear glasses, and I'll get into more of that later probably. So it helps wounds heal 3 times faster than normal. And you can make this technology in your own home using water and electricity. What if all of those things could be done and you could do them in your own home? That's
Let
what
me
we're
ask,
going to be talking about today.
let me ask a question because that sounds all very fantastical, but you have a background that would explain that. So you talked about water and electricity. There's some fundamental forces within nature which you've understood for a very long time. So tell us
Yeah.
how it is that those fundamental natures make all of this with it's hydrogen and so tell us how it works and why it crosses such a diverse pathway for the wellness of our planet.
Oh, that's a broad question. Okay, first I'm going to put on my cannulas, which I'm now inhaling the Brown's gas, which is essentially the next generation from hydrogen for health, and is the technology we were just talking about. So I inhale probably an average of 8 hours a day because I sit at my computer too dang much. But there's people that in order to get their hours in, they sleep with it. Usually an hour or two. Like anytime you sit down, watch TV, eat a meal, whatever, you can be doing your inhalation. Just for those people that are wondering how a person could do that, or you could sleep with it. That's fine as well. Um, for serious ailments like cancer and stuff, Parkinson's, all the autoimmune diseases, all that sort of stuff, you want to get your 8+ hours a day, and that brings your body back into health, and then maintains that health, gives your body what it needs. Um,
George, let me ask a question
I'm
because
getting
most
off your
people,
question for a little. Go
George, let me
ahead.
because nobody knows it because you put it on and you talk about Brown's gas. What is Brown's gas?
Right. Okay. So Brown's gas is a mixture of 6 different constituents. What you do is you take water, run it in a Brown's gas electrolyzer, as opposed to just a regular hydrogen electrolyzer where it splits water into hydrogen and oxygen, and the 2 gases go out separate hoses. Brown's gas keeps everything together. There's no membrane in the middle that separates the hydrogen from the oxygen. So all the gases go out together. But it isn't just oxyhydrogen, which is what the normal electrolyzers do if they're keeping it together. So it isn't H2 and O2. It has additional constituents. The first one is first you've got your H2 and O2, just like any normal electrolyzer. So any molecular hydrogen uh, technology that you see out there, studies are doing with molecular hydrogen. Brown's gas does all that. Plus,
Mm.
with these extra constituents. First of all, there's a water vapor that is just regular water vapor, like you have in the air, H2O. So there's high humidity in the gas. And second, there's a form of water we call electrically expanded water. And what that is water that has soaked up electrons so that it becomes a gaseous form of water, a cold plasma, negatively charged cold plasma form of water. So we call that electrically expanded water. So it's water with all these extra electrons on it, and it's in a high energy state, so it's gaseous. And if you cool it, like bring the temperature down, it doesn't condense like normal humidity would. So it just stays at a gaseous form until you, of course, if you got it really cold, like liquid oxygen or something, it would condense. But generally speaking, this water is stable until it loses its electrons, and then it just goes back to regular H2O. So I call it H2O negative. So it's a negatively charged form of water. This negatively charged form of water is extremely important with Brown's gas and is the thing that makes Brown's gas different from an oxyhydrogen mixture. And about 30% more efficacious in health. It allows steel to be cut if you're using it for a torch about 30% faster. So all these advantages are because it's extra electrons. To give a specific example, most people don't know that the latest pandemic that they did a few years ago, and it was actually a blood virus, not a respiratory virus. So what happened is that it kicked the heme or ferritin or iron, whatever you want to call it, out of the red blood cells and into the plasma. So it's just pumping around. It was still there, but not in the red blood cells. So the red blood cells couldn't attach or collect high oxygen from your lungs. So your blood oxygen level went down. And what the normal doctors would do in North America, it's not what they did in China, um, is they put people on respirators, and 80 to 90% of those people died because the blood just couldn't accept the oxygen even at a higher pressure. Where in China, what they did, because the number one treatment in China, they put people on oxyhydrogen or whatever they wanted to call it over there. They didn't call it Brown's gas, but it's Brown's gas. And within 5 minutes, their blood oxygen levels were coming up. And within 3 days, they're walking out of the hospital completely cured. The reason for that was that and we'll get back to this electrically expanded water, these extra electrons, when you inhale them, they're bioavailable, and the red blood cells would accept this charge, and this electrical charge was enough to allow it, which whatever high iron was left, to grab onto oxygen, and your blood oxygen level started coming up. It also, the extra electrons get rid of something called oxidative cascade, because when oxidation happens, it's losing electrons. Your whatever component in your body is losing electrons. So another component so it goes and grabs an electron from something else. Now that one is electron deficient, and it grabs an electron from something else. So we got this cascade thing happening. So when you inhale this and the electrons go in there, it stops that dead. All those oxidative issues just stop dead because all of a sudden everything has the energy and electrons that it needs to to be healthy.
Let me ask a
Um,
question, George.
yes,
When you're talking oxygen, like water, is the food and the source of life. And so much of the stressors that we're having from EMF, from I actually know the 5G pulls oxygen out of the air. So it's the whole body's getting stressed with all of these extra things going on. So what you're basically saying is you have a tool that will bring back your natural state and even heal because it supercharges the cells in your body. It makes it easier for the mitochondria to work. And so what you're doing is you're not just you're replenishing, but you're restoring.
yes. Which brings us back to the hydrogen side.
Okay.
Oxygen actually doesn't do too much for your body. We're 62% hydrogen, 24% oxygen, 12% carbon, and 2% everything else.
Mm.
So hydrogen is definitely our most important macronutrient, but it doesn't do anything by itself. So to get energy, that's one reason why they're putting in the oxygen. So when you get oxidation happening, controlled oxidation. See, a lot of the oxidation ailments happen when you have uncontrolled oxidation. So your body's literally burning on the inside and losing electrons and all that kind of thing. So when we get the extra electrons in, because you need three things to heal. You need the materials the body needs, plus you need the energy for it to heal, and you need intelligence. The body has the intelligence. Electrons can be given in a lot of different ways. Your body has energy generation systems that can get energy from your food. But people that are ill generally have their energy storage depleted and their energy generation systems compromised. So that's where the Brown's gas with the electrically expanded water comes in, and then it gives you your hydrogen as well. So you're getting hydrogen, which generally speaking, most ailments known to man these days are due to either directly or indirectly lack of hydrogen. So dehydration,
Mm.
if you will. People are dehydrated, but not from water, lack of water, but from lack of the actual hydrogen. So when and just to quickly go why that's happening is we normally get our hydrogen from our food. We put our food in our mouth and masticate it and throw in some enzymes and stuff, drop it into an acid bath where it does some more digestion, and then it goes into the lower intestines with some bile and stuff, and then that's where the microorganisms start to work on it. And then by the time it gets to the colon, just about to exit from you, the specialized bacteria there are able to break off with all this catalyst and enzymes and stuff. They're able to have the energy to break the hydrogen carbon bonds from our hydrocarbon foods. So the hydrogen then goes into our bloodstream, and then our bodies can use it as it sees fit. We aren't having that happen anymore, not enough, because we've got compromised digestive systems. Even something as wonderful as antibiotics kill the good bacteria along with the bad bacteria. So all of a sudden, we need hydrogen supplementation to get our bodies back into a healthful state. And of course, get our microbiome working properly. And then theoretically, you wouldn't need as much hydrogen supplementation. But the point is, as a species on the planet, we are pretty much hydrogen deficient at this time. And most ailments known are directly caused or indirectly, but mostly directly caused by a lack of hydrogen. Just as a quick note on that, the body knows how to stay alive. We were talking about this intelligence thing a minute ago. The body knows how to heal itself and knows how to stay alive. If it's put out in a cold, where you start to get hypothermia, the body will start shutting down blood flows to your extremities to preserve core temperature. These are just automatic things that happen with the body. The same thing happens when you're lacking in nutrition. So when you're lacking hydrogen, the body starts shutting off things that aren't directly life-threatening to preserve the hydrogen for the essential elements like your brain and your heart and things like that. So what happens is it first shuts off your regeneration systems. So stem cells and things like that just get shut off. If you still don't have enough hydrogen, then your immune systems start to shut off. And then if you still don't have enough hydrogen, then your organs start to fail and you'll die. So people are somewhere in that range. If they're not dying right now, then they're in that range of having autoimmune issues of one kind or another. It might be something as simple as you can't get a cold, or you get a cold or a flu or something easily, or it might be something like lupus or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or some other disease that is caused by the lack of hydrogen. And we know this because not only have there been scientific studies on a lot of these ailments, we know it because as soon as people start supplementing with the hydrogen, their whatever the ailment is goes away.
So, George, that deals with cancer and it deals with, like you're saying, chronic disease, but it also your device also deals with aging.
Correct. If you look at me now, you'll see me as I looked at least 20 years ago. And in my presentations, I show before and now pictures and stuff like that, so people can see. There was a time, even back in 2016, when my mustache was and hair was entirely white. I had no coloration, so that's come back a little bit. All the scars on my body have disappeared because my stem cells were reactivated, and instead of the patch that my body had on the skin, or maybe even internal organs, I don't know about that, but I had a relatively prominent scar on my forehead, about half an inch square, where I had been doing a stupid thing. I had a regular socket on an air wrench, and and it flew off and hit me in the forehead. Luckily, it didn't kill me. It was a pretty high velocity. Anyway, I had a half-inch scar there, and that's entirely gone, as well as all the other scars that I had accumulated on my body, some fairly large ones. So, and interesting was it healed them in reverse order that I acquired them. I was interesting how the body works that way, but the ones that I got very young were the last to go. The ones that I had gotten more recently were the first to go,
Mm.
interestingly enough. And I had neuropathies. I had lost the feeling in the palm of my left hand and from my knees to my feet on my shins of both legs. Absolutely no numb, no feeling whatsoever. And all of that came back. So my nerves were healing, and nerves is something that requires the stem cells. But also in the brain, I had because when you have tinnitus, they've now proven it isn't in your ears, it's in your brain. It's how your brain is interpreting things. It's expecting something that isn't there or whatever. So what's happening is my tinnitus went almost to nothing, and I regained my balance. Now, this took 2 or 3 years for that particular thing to happen. So some things happen really quickly. Some things take some time. Every body is different. Everything will be different. But I was able now to stand up in the shower and lift my foot up and wash my toes without leaning against a wall or something. I had the balance, and I've started doing yoga and stuff, whereas I wasn't doing that before. Um, there's a long list of the things that I have that have happened with me, and I'll probably remember more as we go along, like warts disappearing. Warts that I'd had for 50 years, a hand warts and a plantar's wart, disappeared because, again, it's a virus, and my body was able to, immune system was able to get rid of that. Um,
Let me ask a question because when
yeah.
you talk about the plants growing 10 times, I think that explains some of the biological processes and why we need so much more oxygen. What does it do? So I think that explains. Why don't you explain that?
Generally speaking, plants are hydrocarbons, so they're taking carbon from the air and releasing the oxygen, and kind of the reverse of what we're doing. And then they still need the hydrogen, which generally speaking they're getting from the soil, from the water and stuff in the soil. So again, the way they eat still has requires microbiome, but the microbiome is in the soil around the roots and stuff, and then it brings in the nutrition. So if you can provide hydrogen to this microbiome, that hydrogen, first of all, helps the microbiome, but then secondly, gets inserted into the plant. And the plant is then able to grab more carbons from the air and hydrogens from its roots and grow 10 times faster. Now, that's with hydroponics. If you're growing in just soil, like if you have an orchard or a garden and you're feeding it with the brown's gas bubbled water, the plants will grow about 3 times faster. But if you have a greenhouse or you're growing in your own home, your own food, and you have a hydroponic setup, it'll grow 10 times faster.
Okay, so that takes me back to you have another technology that supercharges fuel because you're talking about the efficiency of things.
Yes.
So explain how that one works because we talked in the very beginning, it's a cascading effect on all biological and all sort of energetic systems.
Yes. So the internal combustion engine, um, I happen to be a certified automotive technician specializing in fuel systems because that's kind of how I got my start in my inventing and innovation. And I was able to have a pickup truck going a 1966 Ford F-150 with a 361 engine in it, going 36 miles to the gallon on the highway, and that truck was proven to go over 160 miles an hour, which, by the way, don't do that at home. Pickup trucks are not designed to go 160 miles an hour. But nevertheless, I got a lot of power out of this, and so my fuel saving technology rose from that, and I discovered Brown's gas because carburetors were going out of style, and fuel injection systems were coming in, and I wanted to use the Brown's. I did use the Brown's gas to increase the fuel economy of fuel injected vehicles. Now, the reason that it does so, first of all, it's important to know that hydrocarbon fuels won't burn in an internal combustion engine until they are vapor form and then mixed with oxygen and then burn. And that burn is about somewhere between 2 and 7 milliseconds. And it turns out that depending on the RPM of the engine, from about top dead center to where the piston is moving faster than the speed of combustion of the fuel. so the fuel is no longer providing power to the engine, is about 2 to 7 milliseconds. So you want to have your fuel already in a vapor form when the spark plug fires, because that's the only fuel that is powering your engine. Any fuel that's still in a liquid form at that time does vapor and get turned to vapor in the subsequent combustion, but that takes about 25 milliseconds. And so your exhaust valve is already open, and now this burning fuel is going out past your exhaust valves, which burns up the exhaust valves. So what they do is they throw in additional fuel that when it vaporizes, it actually goes above the higher combustion limit. So it quenches the flame. They actually throw in so much fuel that once the fuel combustion starts, then the flame quenches itself. It actually floods. And then that quenched fuel is going out the exhaust and they burn it in the catalytic converter. Catalytic converters are a big pain in my butt, I tell you, because they're so inefficient. I believe in burning the fuel in the engine. So the first thing a person needs to do is make sure the fuel is in vapor form when the spark plug fires, and only enough fuel so that when it burns, it's combusts completely, and then you have cool fuel going out the exhaust. The second thing that can happen if you're not in there is you can increase the efficiency of combustion. And that's where the Brown's gas comes in, because the Brown's gas, particularly with the electrically expanded water, those extra electrons, when the spark plug fires, it adds extra energy to the fuel and the speed of combustion and pressure that's developed. So the internal combustion engine, even if all you're doing is adding the Brown's gas, you're not even vaporizing the fuel, gets about a 25% increase in fuel economy because you're able to get more power out of the same fuel.
And you have all of these things on your website. So just tell them what your website is, because we'll do it at the end too, but just tell them what your website is.
My general overviewing website, which has all my technologies on it, is eagle, as in the bird, dash hyphen mark research.com. So eagle-research.com. And it's hard sometimes to find. I do try to categorize and stuff, but I've been building that website since 1996. So it's pretty cumbersome right now. So what I do is I break things out. So if we happen to be talking about Brown's gas for health purposes, I developed a machine that we call the AquaCure. And if you go to aquacure.life, Life, you'll see my inventions there that just have to do with the Brown's gas for health purposes.
Do you know what? I don't think you've worked with Dr. Gerald Pollack, which a lot of people in my audience knows, and you're not just somebody who's just talking about Brown's gas. You have done so much research on the topic of water, and most people have no idea how magnificent water is or how complicated it is. They just think, oh, I'm just going to pull water out of my tap. They don't know there's light water, medium water, and heavy water. But you and the heavy water, you have a new machine or a new experiment you've been doing that makes what they call deuterium-depleted water. And
Correct.
what most people don't know about deuterium in water, it's the big one that created the bomb. And in our body, when we have that heaviness in our water, where more molecules, it actually slows down the mitochondria. So part of what you're doing, why don't you explain some of your scientific breakthroughs and your understanding? Because what I did not know, George, it was so funny. I was reading Pollack's, fourth phase of water, and then I realized the fourth phase was also electropiezo, so it actually created that extra charge. I called Jerry up and I said, "Where's that?" And he goes, "Karen, it's the whole book." I mean, he must have thought, "Oh my God, okay." So I didn't get it. Other people I know. So why don't you explain some of that so it clarifies? And you also talk about the fourth phase as being more like a gel. So you can
Yes.
tell people a lot of really good things that they don't understand about water.
Yes. First of all, Jerry also wrote another book called Charged, which will really blow your mind if you start to think about it. All the different ways that the electrons interact in our whole environment and how even gravity and things are affected by this charge. Okay, so I come into the fourth phase of water by reading the book. I think it's called The Fourth Phase of Water
Yeah, it is.
by Gerald Pollack. And as I read the book, I realized that it was actually a misnomer. It wasn't the fourth phase of water, because if go to your chemistry or physics courses in high school, you'll learn there's four phases of matter. You've got your solid, your liquid, your gas, and your plasma. And what Jerry was working with uh, is a gel they call
Easy.
H3O2 negative.
Oh,
Okay, so it isn't H2O. So first,
yeah.
it isn't water, so it can't be the fourth phase of water. And secondly, it's a negatively charged gel. Now, this is this gel is really important for a few reasons, and I'll just kind of dive directly into what's happening with our bodies as far as this gel is concerned. So there's three medical mysteries that if you research, you will find them. The heart cannot produce enough pressure to push blood through all the thousands of miles of capillaries that are in our body. Just doesn't. Okay, that's a medical mystery. The second thing is our red blood cells are twice the size of those capillaries. So why don't they just plug them up like a cork? And I'm not remembering the third one right at the moment, but it'll come to me as I explain this thing. Okay, so Gerald Pollack discovered that water spontaneously forms a zone, EZ exclusion zone. That's what EZ stands for. So the EZ gel or EZ water or structured water, some people are calling it, forms automatically from water. Pure water can be distilled water, nothing in it, against a hydrophilic surface. So hydrophilic is water loving, hydrophobic is water rejecting. Turns out virtually everything in our body is hydrophilic. It loves water. So when we have water in our blood or whatever we're doing, then this gel forms on all surfaces. It forms on the red blood cells and on the outside of all the veins, arteries, and capillaries and stuff. It's the gel that makes up the body of a cell. So that the cell does all its things in this EZ gel. All the mitochondria and the nucleus and everything float around in this gel. So it tends to plump things up. That's one of the things is that my skin has plumped up and the crow's feet and stuff that I was having have disappeared, just as a matter of interest. Okay, so getting back to the gel. Um, so this is all very important, and it turns out that the gel has a negative charge. So if we look at the red blood cells, all of a sudden we have and capillaries, all of a sudden we have a situation where the red blood cell can go into a sausage shape and into a capillary, and it actually has very little friction. Not only because the gel is very slippery in and of itself, but because it has a negative charge, and two like charges tend to repel each other, so that red blood cells can slide through with virtually no resistance. But they discovered an additional thing in the lab is that if there is heat or infrared kind of thing, that gel expands a little bit. So it now we're talking, you have to look at it with an electron microscope to see these layers. It's not something you normally see very thick. But the they discovered that when they're looking with electron microscopes, suddenly, if you have a capillary-sized tube, that it will suddenly spontaneously start to flow fluid with no pump. This is incredibly important to understand. It's the reason why the heart doesn't have to have the pressure to pump through all the thousands of miles of capillaries. All it has to do is get the blood to the capillaries, and the capillaries actually do the pumping. And it's why a tree 150 feet high can get water from its roots. It's not transportation, or how do they
It's
my tongue
okay.
just said trans where the evaporation from the leaves is creating a suction supposedly to pump the water up. That does happen, but that would only be good for about 30 feet, even if you were talking about full atmospheric pressure and a full vacuum. Now, what happens is the from cell to cell, in the capillaries in the plants, it actually pumps the water up to the top of the plants. Okay, so biologically, without this effect, no life as we know it would exist on the planet. So this is one of the interesting things about water, as far as that is concerned, is it spontaneously makes this EZ gel. Now it turns out when you inhale Brown's gas, or when Brown's gas is put into water that is forming easy gel, that the least they discovered. I was working with Jerry Pollack on this exact thing. I was talking at a conference, a water conference, and he stood up and he said, "I know if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, but how does Brown's gas affect easy gel?" And
Jerry
I
had a
said, "I
sense of
don't
humor.
know, but let's find out." So during COVID time, so it cost extra money and time and all kinds of things because everybody was fleeing the universities and what have you. The We did manage to get the experiments done, and we discovered the minimum. If you put Brown's gas in the, if you put oxygen in the water, very little happens to the easy gel. If you put hydrogen in the water, very even less happens to the easy gel. If you put Brown's gas in the water, it expands a minimum of 300%.
Hmm.
And I have experiments here where it's expanded thousands of times. You can actually see the gel with your naked eye. So this
George, are
is
you going to
why
show that us at Tesla Tech?
I am. Yes,
Okay, so
I
I'm
am.
just going to, just a brief thing here. George will be at Tesla Tech this year, August 12th through 16th, as I will be as well. So that would be a fun one to see. So I'm sorry for the interruption, but that's a good teaser.
Yes, yes, it is. So this easy gel is absolutely essential to life. And that's one of the reasons why Brown's gas is better than just regular hydrogen. I call it the next generation of hydrogen because it really enhances that easy gel because of these extra electrons that go in there as well. So,
George,
and that brings it back to what you were talking about, water batteries. Okay, getting
okay, because
electricity.
that goes back to my question, charge. So go ahead. I
Yes.
mean, I think that ties
So,
right into that.
so they
Okay.
discovered in Jerry Pollack's lab, it's Gerald, but everybody who's friends with him calls him Jerry.
Sorry.
If they put a little tiny electrode in the gel itself and then another electrode out in the open water, there's a potential difference there, and electricity will start to flow from the gel back into the water. So you can get electric current. You can actually make electric batteries. So not only can you make pumps like plants do that can pump water spontaneously with no input rather than radiant energy, you can make and that actually there's ways that you can clarify the water as well, but you can make actual batteries from water that are powered by just heat and they spontaneously do their thing. So
Isn't that where the water battery experiment sort of came in as well,
yeah,
George, right? Is that where that came
yeah,
in?
that's where it came in. Yeah,
Okay, there is, if you guys go online, you can look for the water battery experiment or whatever, and I can
right.
attach one to it because it shows how it transfers from one to the other. But then that makes me think of another question, George. Does that mean we're pulling, like Tesla, we're pulling energy from the vacuum? And so if we actually look at it that way, we're doing things more laboriously than we need to when it comes to energy.
Oh yes, definitely. Um, and there's two energies. We can call it energy from the ambient, which is
Okay.
just the regular energy that's around us, the heat energy, the light energy, the electromagnetic spectrum, or you can go from the vacuum, which is the underlying energy of all space and energy that we have. They what do they call it? There's additional names, but the idea is at absolute zero, everything would stop. So as long as you're above that, you're getting energy pulled in from somewhere. And there's been a lot of, and if you go to Tesla Tech, you'll see references to it.
Yeah.
And Tesla did it himself,
That's what
energy
I was going
pulled
to say because that's what
directly
he
from
showed
the
us.
vacuum, the underlying of our space-time continuum. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they took the idea of ether out of the whole equation, which is the most ridiculous thing. And when they did that, they basically said you can't get it from anywhere. It's a way of suppressing the common sense thing of how the whole universe works.
Yes, and that has happened many, many times over the years, and there's people that still believe the old ways. For example, there's people that think the Earth is flat, and they have all their logic and say, "Well, look at this logic," but they don't pay attention to proofs that we live on a sphere, a globe. And I'm not saying that people have gone to the moon. I have seen stuff that says that it was all just made up in photo labs or whatever. But
Actually, George, it's kind of funny. A lot of people are talking about what we just did as April Fools. So I know. So I just it's musing.
Yes. If they had the technology to land on the moon, however many decades ago, why didn't they do it again this time? For example, it was kind of like a photo op of just get NASA back in there's a lot of different acronyms for NASA out there. I remember when the Challenger blew up, they said need another 7 astronauts. It's a
Oh,
bad joke. But that reminds me that I was doing experiments in the parking lot of a town called Tumbler Ridge in British Columbia that very day that the Challenger blew up. And my experiment had exploded, not on fire, but it spontaneously produced enough pressure to blow my gauges out. So luckily we didn't get hit with flying glass and stuff, and there was a big cloud of white smoke come out, which was the fuel vapors. The vapors were white as they had come out. And I had to learn and figure out why my experiment did that. Now, in that particular truck, it got well over 200 miles to the gallon. It was a 1978 GMC with a 252 inline straight six. And I remember one time we went out, my brother and I, we drove all day. I had to have a co-pilot to operate it because I had a thermal cracking plant under the hood. It took gasoline and turned it into methane, and then that's what I was burning in the engine. So he operated the cracking plant while I was driving the vehicle. So we drove all day. We got back, we parked at the same pump, and I opened up the gas tank to put more fuel in to see how much fuel we'd used that day. The fuel gauge had never moved from full, and fuel poured out of the gas tank.
now I have a question. You make me think, does this relate to how Stan Meyer, who actually had a car run on water, does it give you some sort of like clues on how that works?
That's a really good question, and I'd really like to get back into it. I have an idea of how it happens, and also I've seen a lot of other videos online, like the motorcycles running on water and things like that, especially over in the Asian countries. I think I know how it works, and it comes back to the memory of water. Okay,
Mm,
so we'll get to that in just a second. I wanted to
okay.
first talk about the deuterium depleted water that
Okay,
we
I'm
were talking
sorry.
about.
I
No, no,
assume.
no, 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 no. This is kind of just amorphous. We're doing our thing, but this leads into that. So
Okay.
what happens with the deuterium depleted water is when you take Brown's gas. Okay, first of all, water itself has a whole bunch of constituents in it. Even if you're just taking pure water, a portion of it will be heavy water, and they
Mm,
call that deuterium. So instead of H, which is hydrogen, which has an electron and a proton, yes. Um, if you add a neutron into that, you still have the same atom, it's still hydrogen, but now the neutron makes it heavy. So then they call it deuterium, and they say D. So you can have water that is D1H1O, so half deuterium, or you can have D2O, which is straight deuterium, full heavy water. And heavy water, it turns out, was used in the nuclear industry two different ways. The first way was to suppress um, nuclear reactions. And that's important because that's what it does in our body as well. If we get too much deuterium in our body, which is this heavy water, it tends to suppress the metabolic rate of your body metabolism. So then everything just doesn't work as well as it should. So they've discovered that if you start taking in less deuterium, that your body normally gets rid of deuterium over time at a certain rate, and different bodies, different rates, all that kind of thing, then you'll end up with less deuterium in your body and your metabolism comes back online. So people have been buying deuterium depleted water, which can cost, if you buy enough to actually do some good, a couple $1,000s a month. It's very expensive. Well, the AquaCure that we developed can make deuterium depleted water at home for pennies. So the flame itself is actually because, sorry, step back one more time.
okay.
When they used electrolysis to make heavy water, because the light water preferentially splits. It's easier to split the light water. So the light water splits into hydrogen and oxygen and goes up and out the tubes, and the heavy water tends to stay in the electrolyte solution, and then eventually it concentrates, and they were able to get their heavy water out of it. turns out that the heavy water in the electrolyte solution also makes the electrolysis process more efficient.
Mm.
So you get the same gas production with less electricity. I use all those effects in our technology. Now we have light water or light hydrogen and light oxygen coming out of the hose all in one mixture. And when you set that on fire with a little torch, it turns back into water. The oxygen and hydrogen uh, reform into water, but it's in steam form. So you have to properly condense that steam. But once you've got that steam condensed, that is deuterium depleted, and in some cases, I say deleted water.
That
There's
would be
been
awesome.
some samples we've sent in that they couldn't even detect any deuterium in the water.
Okay,
So it's
George, let me interrupt just one second because I want people to understand that one would be like glacier water, which would be like pure. So it's something that they can relate to versus something that's just been coming downstream and collecting. So just a way for them because a lot of what are the people that live past 100 years, they look at the glacier water, it's just more pure water. It's not as contaminated. Is that a way that they could put their mind around what you're talking about?
um, in a way, because we have put a lot more deuterium into the air and the moisture and stuff, and it's no the glaciers when water's coming out of the air, it tends to be purer than water that's coming up out of the ground, except if you get into a
Okay.
situation where they have what they call primary water,
Okay.
which a lot of these healing springs are making primary water, which is water just like what I was talking about now. When you combine hydrogen and oxygen together and get H2O, that is primary water. New
Okay,
water that
but primary water is the stuff that comes from underneath the earth that's like kind of virgin water, where they talk about it in the Bible. Most people don't even know what primary water is, though, George. So you got to explain a little more.
well, the earth is making water.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
It's actually manufacturing it, just like it manufactures oil. These oil wells that have been abandoned have
Yep.
started to fill up again because the Earth's infrastructure underneath is refilling these reservoirs. So um, it's just the primary water or this deuterium depleted water that you're making. I also call it new water.
Okay.
Okay. Now it's very important with when you get so we'll just pause on the deuterium depleted water. People can go out and research that. There's quite a lot of information out there. We've given them the basics that they need to do that. So let's just quickly go on to new water.
Okay.
Now, new water is just formed. It has no memory, and people can look up the memory of water and things like that. And this is getting back to what we were talking about a minute ago with Stan Myers and stuff. So with new water, you can program it to be just about anything. Now, it so happens that I have let's see, I'll just reach over here. If I could, yeah, I can. I'll have to do the thing here. Okay, yeah, here we go. All right. Hopefully I didn't disturb it too much. But if you look in there, you'll see there's sediment in that bottle.
Yep, I see it.
Okay. All right. Well, this bottle was sitting on a shelf. It was all new water in there. There was nothing but H2O, period. Nothing else. New water. It started to form sediment. Now, it was sitting next to a bottle. There was a mineral mixture of 50 different minerals that you're supposed to take an ounce a day to get your minerals and that sort of thing on the shelf. And the sunlight was shining through the mineral water onto this new water. And it imprinted the information of all those 50 elements onto the new water, and the new water started to transmute into this sediment. So they tested the sediment and they found all 50 of those minerals in that sediment. And it had been nothing but H2O was in that. So this is an example, a specific real life example that can be duplicated and other people have, where water can transmute into just about anything. So we're not talking just about water that has a memory. Like there's The Secret Life of Plants is a book that I really love. And it describes various experiments. And in one of the experiments, it talks about how plants, if you take water, if you take a plant and put it in classical music, it grows really nicely. You take that similar plant and put it with acid rock, rah, 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 and it grows kind of scraggly. Well, it turns out if you take water and you put it with classical music and then feed it to a plant, it grows nice, just as if it heard the water. And if you take water that was in acid rock and feed it to a plant, it grows scraggly, just like the if that sound had been actually there. So there's a whole lot of examples of uh, water having memory and then being the biological beings being able to um, read that, just like we read a computer chip or a thumb drive or something like that, the computer does. Um,
Jerry,
Another quick example.
can I interject really quick? Because that goes back to Jerry's work, Pollack, where he said we're basically 99.9% water at a molecular level. So that talks about how who you hang around with, what you do will actually influence because we're vibrational beings, and how our water molecules actually flow and interchange with our environment makes a difference. So when somebody comes in and they're edgy, you kind of do this. So it kind of explains fundamentally how that works. So keep going.
That is definitely one of the things that happens.
Right.
So, getting back to the new water formation, you've got this steam, you condense it, but you have to be really careful how you condense it. Your intentions, your feeling of your whole aura, your body, the environment that is around, the light, the sounds, the electromagnetic spectrum, the water absorbs everything. And so when you condense this, make and condense this new water, it's not just deuterium depleted water like you get from distillation and things like that. It's got this added effect. I think, just as a hypothesis, this may be the basis of Jesus being able to turn water into wine from the Bible, because he was able to directly influence the water.
Mm,
So if you make the new water in an environment that has a medicine, a food, a fuel, it will take on the characteristics of that. And I think that some of these technologies that are out there do exactly that. They have this apparatus which feeds the fuel energy into the water, and then the water acts like fuel.
yeah, yeah. I think we know so little, but
Yeah.
George is in a book I did, which was on called The Echoes of Water. And it's where I took from what is it for the last 15 years when I've done the magazine. Um, Jerry Pollack was very influential in helping me um, find the right people to put in the magazine over the years. And so it was an amalgamation of all of the best people, including you, that show you all the different aspects of water. It's like 200 pages or something. And it just kind of gives you guide points of all the beautiful things and the mysteries of water.
And the artwork in there is spectacular. So it's almost worth reading the book just for that.
Well, you know what? It's kind of like me. I'm this dyslexic queen. So if I can't see it, I don't get it. So everything for me, I think that's why people call Science to Sage more of an art canvas for science, because it helps you translate some of the complicated things in a much more simplified way. So anyway, so keep going, George. I just wanted because it's the miraculousness of water and its complexity of I think it's like the canvas of life. And
Yes.
so and when we understand it that way, we realize that when that's mostly what we're made of, and everything that we do to accentuate, like and how the neural network works with it as a charge, like his book speaks, it's amazing. So yeah, go ahead.
Yes. And to give a couple more examples,
Yeah.
because I think that the water, like the oceans of the world, are almost like the brains or memory of the
Mhm.
planet. And they call this 100 monkey not
Syndrome. You're
syndrome,
right. The hundred monkey. Yeah.
situation. Yep. Where they took monkeys from one island and they started training them to do a particular thing. And then after about they trained 100 monkeys, monkeys on another island suddenly spontaneously started to do that same thing that they had never done before.
Because it's in the field.
And and I think it was the water helping transmit that information,
Yeah.
because another experiment that was done was they took, I think it was three groups of cattle. One was a control group. One was a group that was put in a pen and just left there for the time being. The first one was fed water that was just straight water that was also being used in the slaughterhouse. Then they took the third group of cattle that went through the slaughterhouse, and they obviously used water to clean up the blood and stuff like that. Gross, I know, but this is the experiment. And they purified that water every way they knew how. And they fed that water to the second group of cattle. And that second group of cattle started to exhibit all of the trauma that the cattle going through the execution slaughterhouse had felt and exhibited. So it shows that the water absorbed that energies, and biologically another mammal was able to read that energy and see what the heck.
You know, it was interesting. Randy Hatton was at the Tesla Tech conference last year, and there's something he had said to me. We put all of our chemicals under our sink where the water runs,
Mm,
and that we should. And so since then, I have never put any of the chemicals. I put them somewhere away from the water because it's imprinting those chemicals,
that is a wise insight.
isn't
Thank you
it?
for sharing that. Yes.
So we just take that for granted, but that's all that fluid that we're actually taking in. And there's something else, George, that most people don't think about. It's the structure of the water. And I remember when Jerry would say, people may be drinking, but the water is not charged. It's not alive. And so you're drinking, but you're not quenched, and you're actually still dehydrated. So why don't you mention a little bit about that? And I think
Yeah,
that's what you're bringing back in to what you have.
right.
Right.
So again, some people call this easy gel the structured water, uh, but in any case, water needs to be energized. It's one of the ways we get our energy. It isn't just from the food. If you look at it, the food is actually still mostly water anyway,
Mhm.
and so it's like got stored energy in it, and when we digest it, some of that energy goes out into our body. But we can get a lot of energy just from the environment, from the water we drink, from walking on earthing and TENS machines and things like that. So it is really important, and it turns out that, like he was saying, the more energy that's in the water, the more that easy gel will expand and structure. The water itself gets more of a structure the more energy it has to do so.
But you
So
know what? In the old days, we used to have copper pipes, which was actually a conductor, and now we have plastic pipes. And I think that also makes a big difference, does it not?
it absolutely would have to make a difference.
Yeah.
And one of the things, incidentally, just recently, I learned the copper tended to prevent bacterial infections
Yeah.
or growth in the water, whereas the plastic pipes don't do that. So there was a large advantage to be using copper in the water infrastructure for sure.
You know what else they used to in the Roman times? They used to throw their silver coins into the ponds, and the
That's right.
silver, like colloidal silver, also gets rid of the bacteria. We wouldn't have think of that things, but there's so many things that we have taken away that are so old time common sense that is no longer in our senses to think
Yes.
about.
Yes. In fact, silver was so recognized as antibacterial and stuff that rich people would eat on silver and cook with silver and stuff like that. Some of them so much that they became blue,
Oh yeah. You know, we actually,
blue bloods.
yes. And they used to have the silver forks and stuff because you know
Right.
at that time they didn't have refrigeration,
Right.
and so that was one of the good things they would have needed that for. That would have been a
Yes.
privilege.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can see that. Wow. Okay, so we've covered that we can have better fuel. We can have better health. We can grow our plants better. We've learned a little bit about water, why you need to structure. Does your devices structure water too?
There's a couple of different things that the AquaCure does.
Okay.
First of all, you can put a frequency into water.
Okay.
Into which then goes out with the gas. So there's been quite a few testimonials of people saying, "Oh, this particular frequency wasn't working for me, and I changed it to this one," like going from 420 to 528 or something, and all of a sudden things started to work. The water started to do. and the gas started to do what they expected it to do. So there are people out there that specialize in frequencies. I'm not a frequency expert, but I did make the machine so you could optimize or customize the frequency being
Ah,
impressed on the Brown's gas. So that's an additional thing that it can do.
okay. But most people may not know also that our Earth has a resonant frequency, which is called the Schumann resonance, and that was discovered somewhere, I think, 30s or 40s. And they actually now put that resonant field up with the astronauts because it is literally our ground, and our heart and our mind are attuned to it. So when you're talking about different frequencies, one is more in tune with the Earth, and I think the 520 is more in tune with the heart. So
Right.
I would say, depending on what part of your nature needs to be more nurtured, it might make
Yes.
that difference.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And
Yeah,
so every body is different, and unfortunately, this is an unstudied thing, so people kind of have to experiment on themselves. And if something isn't working, just kind of tweak things this way or that way,
yeah,
and you and it isn't a panacea. Like Brown's gas isn't a one thing. You don't have to do anything else. You still have to pay attention to your vitamins and minerals and uh, and exercise and all the other things that we know to be healthy, not eating simple carbs and things
yeah.
like that. But it is a major tool in the box that
Yeah,
a person would.
it seems like with all the stressors we have, especially with the EMF, I mean, what I think what people aren't are maybe think it's really nice to have all our computers and we like things instance. George, you and I sit on our asses all day long doing our work. I totally get that. Sorry for the swearing. Anyway, but the funny thing is, with all of the interference, it's also microwave technology. And microwave technology is what we cook our foods with. And we've got so much of it happening all around us. And it's such a stressor on our whole system because, as I said, we're 99.9% water. And when we have all of this vibration, all of this other information coming in, it is totally stressing out our bodies.
Yes, and
Yeah.
there's lots of people like that carry their phones. I have mine in my shirt pocket most of the time, right next to my heart. And there's been doctors who work with Brown's gas saying, "Don't do that."
Yeah.
But on the other hand, um, it's convenient, and so I do it. And but it turns out that Brown's gas mitigates radiation damage and prevents radiation damage as well.
That's a key, I
So,
think, right now.
and to give an example from my own personal self, I flew 4 hours to a Tesla event, and you're up at 30,000 feet and stuff, and the people who do the dark field blood work can see when you've been flying because of the damage that they can see in the blood, in red blood cells and stuff. And the woman who did my at the Tesla conference out in the entryway there tested my blood. She said, no, it doesn't make any sense. You don't have any radiation damage for having been up in the upper atmosphere for 4 hours. And you can imagine pilots and stewardess and all these people that are up there all the time, what it must be like for them. But definitely, she knew enough about what she was doing to just be astonished at how my blood had not gotten that radiation damage that would normally happen.
Well, I think, they should go to your site. You have a menu on the site, which is the eagle dot
A dash,
re-
a hyphen mark,
dash
yes,
research.com,
correct.
because there are so many things. And George is extraordinary because you might think he's created these devices. No, he's been researching this for years. And this comes from a personal experience that you had. You lost your first wife. And then when you did this, you begin to understand how you could have over time made things. So a lot of times we get our challenges, and lots of times that we get a solution. And the blessing and the curse. Yeah.
Yes. Um, First of all, I didn't grow up normal. My dad moved to the middle of British Columbia, Canada, and was because he was able to buy land really inexpensive there, like $2,000 for a quarter section. That's 160 acres.
Oh
So
my.
he bought enough land to have 3,000 acres so we could have all our cattle on there. But this was way out in the boonies. we didn't have electricity. We didn't have running water. We had an outhouse. We had a little trapper's cabin, 25 feet square, that nine of us lived in with the dogs and cats and stuff. And up in the attic, each of us, four boys, had one corner that was our bed and stuff. And we'd get up. There was no electric lights, no any of that kind of thing. We'd get up at 4:30 in the morning, candles and lantern, and maybe slog out to feed 4 ton of hay to the cattle, loose hay. There were no bales or anything like that. So I grew up in essentially what would be the 1800s. And when I got away from the ranch, I went out with my pickup truck, which, by the way, that was the pickup truck that got 36 miles to the gallon. I didn't know a pickup truck wasn't supposed to get 600 or 36 miles to the gallon. I I learned that later. And that's one reason why when I became an inventor, I decided to, because I was always an inventor. And when on the ranch, when things would break, I considered myself to be lazy because I never wanted to fix things more than once. So I would figure out how to prevent it from breaking and fix it so that it wouldn't break again. So anyway, I went out into the world and here was all this hot and cold running water in the house. You could take a bath in the house instead of a lake or a stream. You could, or a tin tub in the living room, which we would bring snow in and heat on the wood stove till we get it hot and then pour the water in the tub. And then the youngest child would bathe first, and then it went in the same water up to the oldest, which was me. So, and so every Saturday, we'd have a bath kind of thing. I literally, this is the way that I grew up. And so I became an alternative energy researcher because I swore to myself I'd never be without hot and cold running water and electricity again. We were so far out, we didn't even have radio. There wasn't any TV or radio stations or anything. It was way in the boonies. But mom grew her own garden, so I was very strong and healthy. We only went to town once a month to get various supplies that we couldn't actually have on the ranch, and it was it was a very interesting childhood growing up. So then when I got into school, I tended to take physics and chemistry and mechanics and all those kind of things, not just because I was a boy, but because I had that aptitude. I could understand things it seemed that other people just didn't get. My mechanical aptitude tested literally off the scale. So an inventor was tended to be the thing that I definitely should go into. Now, we went through the fuel savers and we went through water torches with Brown's gas and that kind of thing. And in 1996, a customer took we were talking about using Brown's gas bubbled water to make plants grow. And so a guy figured, what about health for humans? And so he bubbled the water and he put it on a melanoma on his forehead, on a cotton ball. He just kept resoaking the cotton ball several times a day with the bubbled water. And in 3 weeks' time, his melanoma was 100% gone. His skin was completely healed.
Wow.
I didn't believe him. But I did say to my various thousands of people, customers and stuff, here's a potential for Brown's gas. And then people who had electrolyzers started to use it for healing and stuff. And I'm a little bit hard-headed, and so it took them convincing me till 2005, so 1996 to 2005, before I even drank Brown's gas bubbled water myself. And because, and this is important, that water tended to be a little higher pH, so about 8 on the pH scale, the my sister-in-law told my wife not to drink that water because she was a chemistry professor in a university, because a pH of 8 she figured to be unhealthy. So my wife never drank the Brown's gas bubbled water. But shortly after that, and about 2007, I had not gotten sick anymore. So I haven't been sick since 2005. So I started, because I always try things on myself first, I started to tell people, this is what you can do to modify your machines to use Brown's gas bubbled water for health. And then testimonials really started to come in. But shortly after that, getting into about 2008, 2009, my wife got really sick. And we didn't really know why, because she wouldn't go to the hospital. She believed in homeopathy and natural healing techniques. And we ended up spending a lot of money. And I ended up spending all of my time eventually becoming a 24/7 caretaker of this woman who could no longer even roll over in bed without assistance.
Mm.
So I did all the cooking, the shopping, the cleaning, everything. So there's almost a decade there where my research kind of went by the side. I couldn't do business anymore because I was taking care of this quite wonderful woman. And she was an artist like yourself, a multimedia artist, absolutely astounding, the things that she could come up with, and highly intelligent. In any case, eventually, in March of 2016, she did die, and it came to a point where she couldn't breathe anymore, and I had modified her bed and stuff so that she could breathe easier and stuff. So it at that point, we called the ambulance, and they took her to the hospital, and 10 days later she was dead, which was a extremely hard time in my life. So here I am on the couch. I never slept in our bed again. I couldn't do that. In fact, it took me all day just to get back into the apartment we were living in. I'd walk in the door, I'd see her stuff, and I couldn't do it. I have to leave. But I had 5 cats, so I had to eventually come home to feed them. And interesting thing that happened with the cats was, at first, like, Talon was her cat, and every time she left, she'd always say, "Talon, I'm coming back." This time, she did literally every single time she'd leave the house. And this time, when Talon came up to me, I told him that she wasn't coming back, and he just wailed and staggered away. It was incredible. Don't tell me cats can't understand human. They certainly can. And so I'm sitting on the couch. I can't, that's where I slept and sat, and I was just kind of staring into space. Like my life had disappeared, all our hopes and dreams, and everything was gone. And suddenly, all 5 cats came up and huddled around me.
Mm.
Even Talon. So I'm pretty sure that Tanash, my wife, told them that she was okay and to go and comfort me. So that was pretty amazing. And I look over my shoulder at the machine, the ER 50 that I had there, Brown's gas machine that I'd rigged up not for inhalation, but for bubbling the water for drinking for health. And that's what I had been drinking the water from. And I thought, you know what? A few months before, in December of 2015, a person had sent me a video of a Korean hydrogen bar, which was using Brown's gas. I knew the machine; it was the Epoch machines. I knew them, uh, for people to inhale. And from 2007 till, again, at this point in March of 2016, people had been asking me, can we inhale the gas? Because drinking it was giving them health benefits. They wanted to know if they could. And I always said no, because I didn't want people inhaling a potentially combustible gas. But when I saw that video, I suddenly realized I'm a combustion expert, for goodness sake. I should have known this before. As long as you keep the hydrogen in the air that you're breathing under the lower combustible limit, it can't explode. So a lean mixture can't explode. So 4.7% hydrogen in the air and below, you're good to go. Well, 4.7% is the lower combustible limit. So below 4.7, you're okay. And so I rigged up this ER50 to give me about a 2% hydrogen, because I figured that'd be safe. And since then, it's been proven that the scientific efficacious mixture is about 2%. So I kind of just nailed it right there. And I started inhaling myself because literally at that point, I didn't care if I lived or died. I just didn't care. I wasn't suicidal. I just didn't care, to the
Mm.
point where sometimes my chest would hurt so much that I'd realize I hadn't taken a breath. My grief was so much that is shutting down my body. And so I consciously would breathe, and I started to inhale, and my body started coming back alive. So literally the symptoms of grief and all that started to dissipate. And interestingly enough, in addition to a bunch of other things that were happening, my libido came back. And I can tell you, if you have a good libido, you care whether you live or die. So I started dating again, and I met the woman I'm now married to, uh, uh, and she's another wonderful woman. I'm very happy about that. But in the meantime, after about a month of inhaling and realizing that it was doing good for me and it was safe, I went and told my thousands of customers, this is how you can modify these machines to inhale safely. And then the testimonials really started to come in. Incredible, incredible testimonials, people healing from all kinds of ailments.
Mm.
And one of them just about killed me again. My wife had died of lupus, a very severe form of lupus, which is an autoimmune disease. And essentially it shut her organs down to the point where she died. And and this one woman had lupus and inhaled the gas for 3 weeks, and her lupus symptoms were gone.
Oh my.
Yeah, I literally just collapsed on the floor and started crying. I had Brown's gas in my own shop since 1986. God had told me in 1996 that it could heal things, that it'd be good for the body. I didn't even start using it myself until 2005, and then only drinking the water. I didn't start inhaling until March of 2016. So decades after I actually had the technology that could have cured my wife. I'm convinced of that if she had inhaled. Now, she may not have inhaled, that was her choice, kind of thing. But I had the technology and it could have helped. So I got up off the floor saying, God, I understand. And this was my Jonah moment when the whale coughed him up on the beach. This was my moment that said, okay, I will, I will help as many people as possible, not go through that pain and suffering that I did to come to this realization. I will help as many, I want to get as many Brown's gas machines out into as many homes as possible. And I don't care that virtually every commercial on television shows a drug that this fixes without you having to buy the drug. And Big Pharma is going to be upset with me. This has got to happen. And this is just one of the aspects of water that once you get it in your home, you can do other things with it that like you can make emeralds and rubies if you want with the little microtorch and your deuterium-depleted water and your new water and all these other kinds of things that are happening, possibly even fuel and such in making your plants grow better. You can do that now with the technology that exists.
George, are you going to stay for the full time at things so that people can come and because a lot of times when you come to Tesla Tech, the reason I say that, you can come and sample all kinds of different gadgets that innovators have created with the frequency devices, the water devices that you wouldn't normally get to experience. And George has many times come and stayed, and people come and experience it. So you can actually talk to George, be with George, and it's a beautiful thing. Last time you snuck away after a few days, but normally you're there for the whole time. So how often how long are you going to be there?
My intention this time is to be there for the full time.
Okay, okay,
And so people will be able to actually see some of the apparatus. Like I'm intending to actually bring the deuterium depleted water apparatus there so
okay.
that they can see it being done and they can see how easy it would be to set it up. And I can explain how to make it happen.
And I think your
Yes, the last
lecturing,
time
yeah,
I came and went really quickly and I missed seeing Gerald Pollack. I so sad about that, but I had so many other
yeah.
irons in the fire, I just couldn't spend the time.
Yeah, and I think you're either Thursday or Friday. I know you're at 11 o'clock. I can't remember because I was working with Steve yesterday. But yeah, and so I just come experience George. He is just lovely. The experience at Tesla Tech is always, most people don't know it, but it's intimate. I mean, last time when you were there, it was really funny. You were there with Terrence Howard and I and you and a whole t round table of guys, right? Just sitting there confabbing about our life and our different journeys. And it was a beautiful moment. And those are the
Yeah.
kinds of things you can't do when you just do live streaming or you just whatever. Those are those precious moments that we actually why we show up every year.
That's exactly right. That's the thing you mostly get from showing up to an actual symposium
Yeah.
in the present physical. I remember during COVID, I had to do one of my demonstrations or presentations, excuse me, virtually, and I really missed actually being at the symposium. And there's other new energy symposiums and stuff too, but I tend to really like the Tesla Tech. They've been very good to me over the years.
Yeah, and I think the other one people don't know is in the night, there's the free food for the people who show up, and everybody's underneath the cabanas. in the hot, warm, yummy sun, or the evening sky. And everybody, whether you're a speaker or whether you're just one of the other inventors who are looking to connect with people, everybody's integrating. So it's really quite fun.
Yes. And even if you're walking around the tables, you're hearing this conversation and that conversation.
Yeah.
It's like, it's incredible.
Yeah. So, George, thank you so much for giving me your time. And thank you I mean, I think it's the first time I've actually heard the whole story with you and your wife. And thank you for being so heartfelt with that and sharing yeah, that's actually quite precious. So thank you. One more time for where they can find your website.
Yes. So it's the eagle, as in the bird, and because the eagle is my totem and it's the national bird of America and stuff. So the eagle-research.com. Some
Thank you.
people, yeah, that high, some people seem to think it's the ego, EGO. So I always say, like the bird.
Well, thank you for being such a gift to humanity.
Thank you for allowing me to be here on your this presentation. It's
Yeah.
always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. All right.
You'll help more people.
And we'll see you at Tesla Tech.
Absolutely.
All right.